Got all your animals on the boat? The housing crash of 2021 is coming! Or is it? I'm Caroline Reed with The Real Deal, the place to go to get the confidence and the clarity that you need to make the right real estate decisions for you. Today, we are going to dive into the hysteria around the housing crash of 2021. Is it going to happen or not? So first, let's start by talking about what a crash looks like. What is a crash? Right now, we are in a crazy seller's market. We have way too many buyers chasing way too few homes. So for a crash to happen, that has to flip around. We need to have way too many houses for way too few of buyers. Once that happens, prices start to fall. And then FOMO kicks in, fear of missing out. And then more sellers put their house on the market to try to get rid of it before prices get too low, which pushes prices down even further. And it's a vicious cycle that keeps going until prices get low enough that somebody says, hey, maybe I'll buy a house. So what has to happen to get that vicious cycle rolling? Well, according to the National Association of Realtors, a balanced market, neither a seller's market or a buyer's market, is about 6 months worth of inventory. Right now, we have about 2 months of inventory. And according to their calculations, that's about 1 million homes on the market right now. So if that's 2 months worth, then 1 month's worth would be 500,000 houses. We have 2 months of inventory right now. We need to get to 6 months of inventory. 4 months, 500,000 per month. That is 2 million houses that we need to come onto the market to be able to get to that balanced point. Now, of course, today we are talking about a crash, meaning a crazy buyer's market. So we not only need those 2 million, but we need more than that to push it to the buyer side. So probably more like 4 million. So how in the heck do we get 4 million houses to flood the market and create that crash? There's a number of places that these houses could come from, but I think there are probably 4 main places. A possible foreclosure wave, a possible rise in interest rates, a rise in unemployment, or new construction is also a factor. So let's talk about a foreclosure wave. Right now, there is a foreclosure moratorium that has been extended yet again to the end of June. So nobody can be foreclosed upon right now. So another statistic that people love to look at is the mortgage delinquencies, people who are late making their payments. Now, if you remember, about 6 months ago, I said this. And if you look at the chart of mortgage delinquencies, which is a little alarming because it's got a huge spike right now, keep in mind that if you are in a forbearance status, that shows as a delinquent mortgage. So that delinquency chart also includes those forbearances, which may or may not be in trouble. Not all of them are in trouble. And then just last week, one of my favorite financial gurus, Meet Kevin, said this.
So we have 3 million people in mortgage forbearance, but the people in forbearance aren't necessarily signaling that they can't make their payments because anybody could sign up for mortgage forbearance. Still today, anybody could sign up for mortgage forbearance. Just have to raise your hand. I want mortgage forbearance. Okay, no problem.
Right? Nobody knows how many of people in forbearance need to be in forbearance. If you can just say, yeah, I want forbearance, and the bank has to give it to you, you could be absolutely just fine. And that's not necessarily a bad thing because you could be using that money to pay down credit cards and getting yourself into a better financial place. So to look at the delinquency statistic as the gospel of how many people are in trouble is a really, really bad idea. We have no way of knowing how many of those are true trouble. Not to mention the fact that the number of people who are making their mortgage payment by the end of the month is continuing to grow. And keep in mind that forbearance does not equal foreclosure. The CARES Act has given banks a lot of space to be able to enter into loan modifications with their customers, keeping some of the people who may have before pandemic gone into foreclosure out of foreclosure. And there's a lot of people out there who are trying to compare this to the crash of 2008, because of course it wasn't that long ago. It's pretty fresh in our memories. However, it's a completely different situation than it was in 2008. First of all, people have way more equity in their houses today than they did in 2008. So they are far less likely to walk away from that nest egg. And the pool of buyers is way better than it used to because sellers have so many options, so many offers to choose from. They're choosing the strongest buyers to buy their house. Average buyer credit scores are in the high 700s. And even banks are following suit with only approving the best of the buyers. Because they can. It wasn't like that in 2008. In 2008, ninja loans were everywhere. Ninja, no income, no job. As long as your credit score was okay, they would give you a loan. And how do I know? Because I had one. And another thing that didn't happen in 2008, this time around, we have had at least $50 billion in housing and rental assistance so far. And I'm sure there's likely to be more because there never has been a politician who wouldn't want to spend more money in the name of the people. So I am sure they will keep going. And foreclosures take forever to get through the process. And every situation is different. So not every person is going to get foreclosed on at the same time. So it's not like there are millions of houses that are all going to go into foreclosure on the very same day. That's just not going to happen. Plus, it's expensive for banks to go through that process of taking somebody's home back and then getting it back out onto the market. So the banks don't want to do that because it's costing them more money. And like I said, the CARES Act gives them much more flexibility in doing loan modifications with their customers. They would much rather do that than foreclose on the home. Okay, so let's talk about interest rates. They've ticked up a little bit, but they're still pretty low. Now, keep in mind that a 1% rise in interest rates equals about a 10% drop in housing prices. Now, we just had a 0.5% rise in the last 6 months, and the demand is still so high, nobody even noticed. Now, keep in mind, the Fed has just said that they are not likely to raise interest rates anytime before 2023. So the chances of that interest rate rising high enough to affect housing prices enough to start that crash or continue that crash is pretty unlikely. So let's talk about unemployment. Unemployment levels are still ticking down and are almost down to pre-pandemic levels. Plus, states are now starting to open up again, which means that some of those jobs are going to start coming back, and I think unemployment is going to continue to tick down. And your job today is to go down and hit that like button. So that brings us to the last of the 4 places that I think those houses could come from, and that is new construction. Now, if you've paid any attention to the news, you've seen that lumber is up 200%. And estimates are that is adding $24,000 or more to the cost of building a new house. Not to mention that supplies are scarce. New construction starts were up to pre-pandemic levels, but this last month they've started to tick back down again. And one theory is that home builders are starting to kind of dial back on the number of houses that they're starting because they don't have the supplies. So the thought of the market being flooded by all these new houses, probably not going to happen either. And just as a little food for thought, here's a couple other things to think about. Inventory. Obviously, inventory is kind of the buzzword as far as all of this crazy seller's market's going, because we have none. But should the market start to get flooded with more inventory, the banks always have the choice to loosen up some of the credit restrictions that they have right now, bringing more buyers into the market to eat up some of those extra houses. And people think that all these high prices that we have going on right now, that it's a big bubble that has to pop. But it doesn't. That is not necessarily true. Median household income has gone up over the last 6 or 7 years by $8,000. That gives people a lot more money to spend on housing. Or just to put themselves in a better financial position by paying off credit cards and things like that. And the option to take the forbearance just kind of puts that on steroids. And if it's one thing that this pandemic has taught us is that we can work from home. So there are a ton of people moving out of the city into the burbs and putting more demand on already high demand areas. So my message today is, sorry buyers. Looks like it's going to be a pretty tough row for you to hoe for a while yet. So in the meantime, keep your credit strong. Build that down payment nest egg as big as you can get it and do what you can to qualify for a conventional loan because the seller prefers a conventional loan over an FHA loan because it's a lot less hassle. So is there a crash coming? Well, obviously market fluctuations are inevitable, but is it going to be like 2008? Probably not anytime soon. If you'd like more information on getting that conventional loan, go ahead and click right here. And if you like this kind of content, you can go ahead and click the subscribe button. Thanks for watching. See you next time.